Welcome to the Game Week 17 video. So this week we have the 3 o'clock kickoffs and Chelsea versus Sunderland. So obviously big news with Mourinho being sacked. And for me, I think it is the right decision. The players no longer, the word betrayal was brandished by Mourinho when he described how he thought the team performed against Leicester. And I think it was inevitable if you ask me. And the problem now is the replacement for Mourinho. And it looks like a manager will come in more on an interim basis until the summer, until they can find someone for the long term, whether that's Pep Guardiola or somebody else like Diego Simeone. That's so far not very clear, but most likely it looks like Gus Hiddink will come back to Chelsea until the summer, and then Chelsea will appoint a new manager. In terms of the last game against Leicester, I think they was caught napping. I think Leicester, obviously, as I said, if they take the game to Chelsea, which they didn't do exactly, they played it to their strengths, and I think at the right times they pressed, and the right times they stayed back, and Chelsea did get a goal back. But you never actually ever felt that Leicester were in danger, in my opinion. I think Leicester controlled the game, and Hazard going off in that game injured, whether he faked that injury or not, no one really knows. But yeah, this is a big game for Chelsea because Sunderland are right in that zone which they currently belong in. Chelsea right now are in a relegation battle. We're halfway through the season, and the table reflects a truthful story on the day of how the team has performed. So a big game for Chelsea. In terms of players I recommend, look, Hazard, there is no concrete evidence saying that he will play, but it wouldn't surprise me if he does play. So he's someone who I would always say look at Hazard. Costa looks like he might play, but in terms of guaranteed players, I mean, I wouldn't really be touching Chelsea players at the moment, just because it looks like Gus Hiddink will come at Chelsea, and if you remember his time at the club, he pretty much played the same first 11 for every game because he believed in keeping things the same consistently unless there were injuries. So once I do think Gus Hiddink is appointed, we will know which first 11 Chelsea will predominantly play through the season with, and then from there we can kind of select players. But right now it's a bit of a hit and a miss when you talk about players like Willian, Oscar, Pedro. The only two players you could maybe look at in terms of offensively for me is Hazard and Costa, and that's obviously coming at a very premium price. And defensively, you have maybe Courtois at 5.2 if you're dealing with expensive keepers. But defensively, who's going to be the centre back partnership? Zuma, Terry, Cahill? It's a bit unknown, and I don't want anyone to really get these players unless they're really getting them for the short term, which no one really knows the true answer of. So that's my analysis of Chelsea. In terms of Sunderland, a disappointing defeat for them against Watford, but to be honest, I wasn't that surprised. And like I mentioned in my previous video, Watford have shown themselves to be a very good team defensively, and Sunderland were they just weren't able to break them down. This game, however, is a big game for both teams. Look, most people think Chelsea will come out with a reaction, and it wouldn't surprise me if Chelsea win, but can go either way, and it's going to be a really good game to watch. In terms of the Everton-Leicester game, Everton for me probably should have won the game against Norwich based on the first half performance. Numerous chances for Lukaku especially, only took one, and at the end of the day they got punished. And to be honest, by the end of the game, looking at Jerome's chance, Norwich should have won that game. So Everton will be disappointed because I think they've had quite a few games now where they really could have got more points. But either way, Leicester, this is probably a challenging period for them. They've got, you would say, a succession of real tough games in the Premier League at probably the worst time, Christmas time. And if they do get any injuries now, it will be a big blow, especially someone like Vardy or Mahrez. In terms of players that I recommend from both sides, it's the same, in terms of who I recommend from Everton with Lukaku, Delafeu, Barclays, etc. Obviously, Baines come back, and Baines did hit the framework, in the previous game. So he's shown clear evidence that he's involved in Everton's offensive play. With Leicester, same thing. I would say Mahrez and Vardy. And this year, I've been very stubborn in not getting Mahrez. Whether I do get him in, that's something that's debatable just because of the fixtures he have. But I would say if someone's had Mahrez for the first almost half of the season in fantasy, they've done very well. And he's shown that by being the most prolific midfielder in the game. Look, Everton Leicester, it wouldn't surprise me to draw, but any team can snatch this. And I guess as an Arsenal fan, I'd prefer if Everton were to get the points, but don't underestimate Leicester. In terms of Man United and Norwich, like I said, Norwich were a bit unlucky not to get the 3 points against Everton on the second half performance. Man United lost against Bournemouth and wasn't that surprising, if I'm honest. I mean, they played absolutely bad. I don't think they played well enough. And taking off Fellaini as well at the end. Fellaini is someone, surprisingly, I will look at. If he is playing consistently under Louis van Gaal, which maybe he might be because of injuries, he's someone I'll look at because he does have that, that ability to get some points in fantasy. He's involved, obviously, in set pieces. He could get the occasional assist and obviously could get the goal like he did. So he's someone I'll look at for sure. Really looks like he might come back to play his 500 game. And that would probably mean that Martial will go back to the wing. From Norwich, look, Houlihan is a player maybe to look at, but honestly, I wouldn't really deal in much Norwich players. I think, if you're going for players relatively with low budgets, then obviously Ryan Bennett at 3.9 is a good shout. Otherwise, I really wouldn't get Norwich players. In terms of this game, I do think Man United will probably come back, respond from their disappointing defeat against Bournemouth, and especially with Rooney coming back to his 500 game, it wouldn't surprise me to see him on the score sheet. So I'm going for a Man United win. Southampton and Spurs, it's been a pretty bad few weeks for Southampton, and I honestly think this might seem a very controversial opinion, but I think it's down to the manager. I think he's really changed the first 11 a bit too much. When something's working, don't change it, and he's done that a bit too often this season. And now they, got a few bad results. And this is a big game for them because you just think if Southampton lose now, they just get closer to the relegation zone. Spurs, on the other hand, very surprising defeat to Newcastle. I haven't watched the entire game. Spurs had quite a few chances in that first half, some good saves from Elliott on Lamela on a few occasions. Probably why he got a bonus as well. But Spurs had enough chances. Second half, they just lacked steam. I think they didn't have enough energy, drive, to continue the same intensity they showed in the first half. And Newcastle, all they needed was a chance to come back in the game, which they got from Mitrovic's goal, and then a total mistake from Norris to give Newcastle all 3 points. So Spurs had a great opportunity to make up for the defeat that Man United suffered and getting into the top 4, which they didn't capitalise in. So there is that question mark. Are Spurs really going to take advantage of the chances that they get this season? And that's something that remains questionable. In terms of players I recommend from both sides, look, from Southampton, Pele's been dropped. And, Long had a chance, in the game, and he didn't take it against Crystal Palace. So it makes you think, will Pele come back? I wouldn't really gamble on it. I wouldn't gamble on a Southampton player at the moment. I don't think it's worthy. Similarly with Spurs, I can see them scoring against Southampton. So the question is, Spurs side, who do you think offensively is worth a shout? Eriksen and Kane are the 2 players I look at. Lamela, Eriksen likes to play in that middle, which he didn't because, Lamela scored a hat-trick in the UEFA Cup game, which is why he probably started against Newcastle. And he did get chances. So he might be worth the gamble. And this is for someone who really wants to take the risk. But probably Southampton away, with Southampton needing points, probably wait for a later week. But in terms of the result of this game, it can go either way. I wouldn't be surprised though, however, if Spurs, really retaliate and, beat Southampton. It's just a question of the stability of the first team for me of Southampton. That's the main pressing issue. Now, with Stoke and Crystal Palace, Stoke 0-0 away to West Ham. They had chances. Arnautovic, I rather that thing 6.1. I think he's definitely worth a shout. And similarly for Crystal Palace, 6.2 Balassi. These are 2 players who I would say people should be looking at potentially. Obviously you have Kobaye, these other players, but those 2 players really, are worth looking at. And in terms of this game, I don't know if Shaquille will be back. Most likely he will be, but it wouldn't surprise me he isn't because, he has got a bit of a hamstring pull, etc. So the way I see it is, I'm personally not going to call it because I think both teams can win on the day. And Crystal Palace's wave record is pretty good this season, and Stoke have done quite well at home this season as well. So yeah, I mean probably just favour Stoke, but it wouldn't surprise me if Palace got something out of this game. In terms of the last 3 o'clock game, West Brom and Bournemouth. West Brom unlucky not to get all 3 points against Liverpool, and Bournemouth obviously very buoyant from the 2 consecutive victories against Chelsea and Manchester United. To the recommendations, it's a similar story as to before. Nothing more to add, and yeah, I mean, in terms of where do I see this game going, I think it really depends on if Bournemouth play the football and are able to play the kind of football they want to play that Eddie Howe has kind of installed in them. If West Brom don't do enough, which I think they will, it wouldn't surprise me. It can go either way, but it wouldn't surprise me if this is a draw. And then lastly, in the 5:30 game, Newcastle and Villa. Big game for Villa. You know, Newcastle come back from a big victory, whereas for Villa, they really didn't show up against Arsenal, in my opinion. Hardly had posed any threat. It's a massive game for Aston Villa, and I think if they go on to lose this game, it really puts them in a very vulnerable situation because this is practically a 6-pointer. Newcastle are a team that are close to them, and this increases the distance into the safety. I would say the minimum is that Villa really can't afford to lose this game. But I do think that because of Villa's problems defensively, Remy Gard not being a great defensive coach, and no one really looking like they're going to score goals for Villa. Whereas on the other hand, Newcastle obviously raised in confidence from the last victory and do have something about them. I'm going to go for a Newcastle win. Now, lastly, in terms of the Sunday games with Watford and Liverpool, Watford, I would just say, it is no fluke in terms of the defensive points they've been getting in terms of defenders, and you saw Naum getting some very good points last week. Liverpool, on the other hand, Henderson, he's one player I recommend. He has a penalty kick. I think he's valued at 6.5, originally valued £7 million. Got a goal and assist last week. He's someone, along with other players I mentioned from Liverpool, that is worth looking at. In terms of what I think this game will end up being, it wouldn't surprise me if actually Liverpool go and win this game. Most teams have now had a 1 week rest and no way for cup football. I think Liverpool will probably just have enough. Despite Watford's great one, I think it will just be a bit of a reminder that they're back in the Premier League. But expect them to cause problems, and it wouldn't surprise me if Watford did get a goal. And the last Sunday game is Swansea and West Ham. Swansea were very unlucky not to, in fact, maybe even win the game against Man City. Whereas West Ham, they've been really struggling since Payet's injury. And there's not really much to add. I think Carroll's also injured for the visit for the Swansea trip. So I'm similarly going to go again I'm probably going to say this is going to be a big win for Swansea. And Gomez, a good strike, a good goal. Maybe Jahok could have done better, but he's someone to look at. And maybe Sigurdsson. I still think, looking at how Sigurdsson played, and probably he should have had a goal against Man City, he's probably one player I'd recommend. Now, lastly, the big game of the week for me, the Monday night game, Arsenal and Man City. And there's no doubt, potentially, with Leicester dropping some points, maybe whoever wins this game goes top. And I would say, as an Arsenal fan, it's probably paramount Arsenal don't lose this game. But we should go and try to win this game because the rewards, I think, of winning this game are far better than losing it in a weird way, especially with us being home. The players, I got in Ramsey this week, and I also got in Giroud, who both got on the score sheet. Sanchez had a chance of coming back, but I would say you want to kind of stockpile on these players, especially Man City. I think Man City have got some decent fixtures coming up. So, yeah, I think with Aguero, on the other hand, even though he might play or might not play, he's still a risk, especially with the value and the equity of £30 million essentially on the player. You don't want to take that risk right now, especially in the Christmas time. And you might want to just see him play a 90-minute game before you get him in your team, in my opinion. In terms of the players that I recommend, same as before. Silva now £10 million in the game. And yeah, there's nothing more to add. Even Yaya, surprisingly, he's a risk, but he does offer the potential of scoring goals. And, like he did last week with it wasn't his goal exactly, but he got an assist. And potential penalty kick if Aguero's not on the pitch. So that's my analysis of this game week. So far, I haven't done any transfers for my team. And yeah, so if you guys haven't joined the league, do join the Fantasy Football Fan League. And otherwise, have a great game week.